This video is brought to you by AKS IAS.
Penkeesu, Dheeraj, Reddy.
Yes, sir.
What is your native place?
Nalgonda, sir.
Nalgonda. Proper Nalgonda?
Nalgonda town, sir.
Nalgonda town. So is this your first attempt?
No, sir, second attempt.
In the first attempt, what was your achievement? Did you clear your prelims?
No, sir, couldn't clear.
So this time you are going for interview
Yes.
in the second attempt. Your optional is anthropology.
Yes.
You did your graduation from?
From Professor G. Ram Reddy Center for Distance Education, sir. OU.
OU.
Osman University.
University. So it's not a regular stream.
No, sir.
Distance education.
Yes.
So did you choose for preparing IAS? You did not enter into any regular college?
No, sir. Actually, in 2015, I entered into Computer Science Department of IIT Delhi. In the second year, I had dropped out of it. So, in 2016, when I dropped out, the academic year already began. So, I could not join a regular college. So, I opted for...
In which year? 2015?
Yes, I dropped out in 2016.
Okay. What is the reason?
Sir, my father wanted me to be an engineer. But my heart was mostly into liberal arts.
Liberal arts.
Yes, humanities.
Very good. So you could have taken in some university which is catering to your interests, like liberal arts. There are many private universities nowadays which are catering to such interests.
Sir, I thought OU being a state university would have top class lecturers and would pay a growth. So I opted for OU.
But for distance education, very few lessons you will be taught in a direct mode.
Yes.
Only during summers.
Yes.
So in that way, did you lose your regular education in the university process?
Sir, I think there was a trade-off. Like the special circumstances in which I was, I had to make the most out of what I could. So I opted for distance education rather than wasting a whole academic year.
Your graduation optional, sir, history.
Political science and public administration.
And your optional for civil services is anthropology.
Yes, sir.
It is not fitting into your graduation.
Sir, actually, anthropology also derives from these three subjects. Also, it is a synthetic science, and it also derives from arts, humanities also. I chose anthropology because I personally had an attraction to it, and I also found that it was scoring high in the previous years. So, taking into consideration my interest and practical element of scoring high marks, I opted for anthropology.
In graduation also you could have opted for sociology.
Yes, sir. In graduation, I wanted to go for subjects which I was more familiar with. So I went for history and political science.
So, if you are not choosing anthropology, what would have been your subject?
In the options, options, I would have chosen political science.
Political science. What exactly interests? Which aspect of political science interests you?
Sir, international relations.
International relations. Why so?
Sir, it has an element of engagement and the pride of representing the nation at the international table, protecting India's interests, and general engagement in such with nations to protect our interests.
So your choice of employment in terms of this should have been number 2 should be IFS.
Sir, I chose IPS over IFS because I wanted more of a public interface, the ground level.
Okay.
Where I felt I could generate more impact on the life of people. So I put IPS over IFS.
Then the 4th choice is Indian Revenue Service.
Yes.
Which is not having public interface.
Sir, I have talked to a few IRS officers. They have said that IRS these days is more diverse with the coming of GST. So I went for IRS as my 4th option.
4th option.
And it was also better than the other options, following options like audit and account services.
There is something like you have written about Bhongir.
Sir?
Bhongir is there. Yeah.
Yes,
English Government School, Bhongir. Mother service.
Yes.
Was she a teacher?
Yes.
What is the specialty of Bhongir?
Sir, the textiles, Pochampalli textiles.
Bhongir, Pochampalli, you are talking about the district.
Hmm.
But Bhongir proper, I am talking about.
The town.
Town,
Sir, there is a fort, sir.
fort. Which period?
Sir, I believe it is. Sorry, sir, not able to exactly recall right now, but as far as I remember, it is some 15th century.
Bhongir is Bhuvanagiri.
Yes, no, sir. Western Chalukyas, there was a king, Tribhuvanamalla.
Tribhuvanamalla. With this clue you could get.
Yes, sir, I think it's 12th century, 12th century.
This is 11th century. Around 10, 20 or so. Tribhuvanamalla of Kalyani Chalukya, that is Western Chalukya. We have the history in this Bhongir. Forget about history. What is the geography of Bhongir? That fort is located on a huge hillock.
Yes.
Is there a specificity about that hillock?
Sir, it is monolithic rock, sir.
Monolithic is a broad term here. There is some specific aspect of it.
You mean the composition?
Composition, geologically.
Sorry, sir, not aware of the specific composition.
It is the batholith, batholith, batholith. Batholiths are the stones which just emerge out of the earth when formation stage itself. It is not formed outside, it just protruded out of it. That is one of the biggest batholiths of this Deccan area. Batholith. On that the fort is built.
Yes.
Have you visited that fort?
Yes.
Any other forts you have visited in your lifetime?
I think Golconda Fort, sir.
What is the period of Golconda Fort?
Golconda Fort around same sir, 15th century.
15th or 16th? Or before?
Sorry, sir, 16th century, 16th century.
Means which dynasty?
Qutub Shahi, sir.
Qutub Shahis. So do we have the fort before or it just started or built during Qutub Shahi period?
Sir, as far as I remember, the Qutub Shahis had built the fort, but with time, the Kakatiyas had built the fort, and these Qutub Shahis had reinforced it, and it went on like that with gradual evolution. It was reinforced with time.
It is not even a direct Kakatiya fort. Some feudatory of Kakatiya, a Yadava, but not having much history of it today. So that is a mud fort, original mud fort, reinforced in the Qutub Shahi period.
Yes.
Apart from Qutub Shahi's contribution in terms of fort and the architecture, is there any important structure in Hyderabad which you proudly claim that this is the wonderful architectural marvel of Qutub Shahi period?
Sir, I would say Charminar.
Charminar. That nearby Golconda Fort?
Nearby Golconda Fort. Not able to recall.
Nearby Golconda Fort, you have this 7 tombs.
Good. Qutub Shahi tombs.
Qutub Shahi tombs.
Yes.
That is part and parcel of Golconda structure itself, the
Yes.
complex itself. Have you visited it?
The tombs, no, sir.
Hyderabad city is located on which river?
Sir, no, sir.
Where is it originating?
Originating. Sorry, sir, not able to recall.
Because this river is part and parcel of your entire Hyderabad plus your native district Nalgonda.
Yes.
Originating in Vikarabad district, Anandagiri Hills.
Yes.
And merging with Krishna, where?
Vadapalli, sir.
Vadapalli. Again, the old Nalgonda district.
Yes.
Vadapalli. So, you know that there is one river in Hyderabad. Apart from Musi, there is another river in Hyderabad. Do you know that?
Another river in Hyderabad.
Have you heard Isa?
I think it's a tributary, sir.
Smaller, of course. But Isa and Musi are different.
Yes.
Both meet in Hyderabad.
Yes.
Where exact location?
Meeting point. Sorry, sir. Not able to.
That is Langarav's Bapu Ghat. The Isa and Musi. Because most of the students know about Musi, but not ISA. This is one of the old facts. If someone is in the board who knows about Hyderabad's, it's a chance.
Yes.
I don't say that they'll be knowing everything, but because there are many big officials who worked in Hyderabad, they know they're interested about Hyderabad geography.
Yes, sir.
So coming back to your anthropology optional, which part of the anthropology you are interested in?
Sir, the sociocultural part.
So, means explain.
Sir, sociocultural anthropology studies how societies organize their social relationships, how do they define and organize their social roles, the social stratification, structures, and allocation of power and resources. Sir.
Can you name any person who has written in 19th century itself about the societies and their organization, tribes, clans, and everything?
18th century. Sir.
18th century, 19th century.
19th century.
Very classical work when we talk about the human societies.
Societies in 19th century.
Very old work. Have you heard about Henry Louis Morgan?
Yes.
The title of his book, his work?
Morgan's book. I think social structures. Sir.
Ancient Society.
Ancient societies.
Based on his work, there is another classic written by one Marxist. Again, organizing the society. What is the title?
Yes, sir. I think Marx. Marx was inspired from Morgan.
What is the title? If it is Marx?
Das Capital.
No. No. It is just guess. You guessed since I said Marxist. But there is another Marxist apart from Marx.
Engels.
He wrote a book giving you a clue. Do you know what Engels has wrote? Any titles of Engels?
Sir, he collaborated with Marx for the Communist Manifesto.
Apart from that, is there any independent book on his to his credit?
Not able to recall it.
ఇంకొక 1 hour అవుతుందన్నమాట ఇది ఇక్కడే ఉంటున్నారు బాక్లో ఉన్నాను రైట్ ఒక 1 hour అయ్యారండి ఓకే సారీ యా ప్లీజ్
Sir, not able to recall it. Sorry, sir, not able to recall it.
Family state, the origin of family, state and private property. This is one of the book he has written based on Morgan's work.
Yes.
Origin of family is one of the important aspects since you talked about social organization.
Yes.
Is it not? Family is part of a social organization.
Yes.
Then what exactly is matriarchy?
So, matriarchy is a form of society, social organization, where power is exercised or transferred from mother to daughter. Sir.
Do we have matriarchal societies today? Or did we had in yesteryears, recent past, 2-3 centuries back, or some in recent memory?
Sir, I would say the Amazons, sir. Amazons had matriarchal societies. Yes.
In Indian context?
In Indian context, the Lakshadweep, sir, Lakshadweep Islands. And to some extent, there is an element of matriarchy in Nairs and the Garos, sir, due to the matrilineal there.
It is which part is important, whether matrilineal or matriarchy?
In those two tribes.
Yeah.
Those two tribes are matrilineal, sir.
Then matriarchy.
Sir, I have a different opinion on this because the Avanku local element is very strongly prevalent in the Nairs, sir, and also in the Garos, because the uncle, he exercises a lot of power in there. Despite the matrilineal present there, and they are the de jure authorities, but de facto power is exercised by the uncle, sir.
Yeah. So that is why I said which element is important, which element is dominant, whether matrilineal or matriarchal.
Matrilineal. Sir.
Matrilineal. Yeah. Do we have polyandry in India?
Yes, sir.
Where?
The Todas, sir. Neatly.
Sure.
Yes.
Still?
Yes, sir.
North India?
In North India, Jawansari Barbers, sir.
Very good. Which state?
The Himalayan belts, Uttarakhand and Eastern UP.
Uttarakhand.
Himachal.
Not Eastern UP. Complete Uttarakhand. Jaunsar is the uppermost portion. Jaunsar is. They had, now it's almost gone. What exactly is the reason behind polyandry? What is it, social, cultural, or economic?
Sir, I would say a mix of all the elements, sir. There are many contributing elements for polyandry. One of the primary reasons is the scarcity of resources. In the family structure, the father is the breadwinner and he needs to collect the resources and provide to the children. In a scarce resource environment, there is need for multiple fathers to provide for the survival of children. So this generally creates polyandry.
Which resource is scarce?
Generally food, sir.
Food or land?
Sir, their population densities are generally limited. So I would say food.
Means food is the product of the land.
Yes, sir.
Then do you call land as the resource or food is as a resource?
Sir, land is a resource.
Yeah.
But food is what we depend upon.
Yeah, but here the problem is the land.
Yes.
When we talk about resource, it is the land. Because of the hilly tracts, non-cultivability, and the limited resources of tools.
Yes.
This is one of the things.
Yes.
So, in history, there is an interesting thing known as matronymical. Matronymical. You talked about matrilineal and matriarchal. Matronymical or matronymical, people pronounce in different ways. MATRINYMICAL, matronymical or nomical. Do you know what exactly is it?
Sir, I think you are referring to the Shatavahanas.
Yes.
They are naming the naming is based on the mothers, sir. So that is a matronymical, like Gautami Putra Shatakarni.
Do you have any other dynasty which is having that? Apart from Shatavahanas?
Matronymy besides Shatavahanas.
Think about the successors. Who are the successors of Shatavahanas?
Sir, I would say the Guptans.
No.
Nothing.
No. Just you cross the Vindhyas.
Okay.
And even if you say 1-2 centuries.
There will be the Ikshwakus.
Ikshwakus, successors of Shatavahanas.
Yes.
They also have the same tradition. They continued it.
Yes.
Is it not? So, in that sense, just taking the name is important, or why? Why they have taken the name?
Sir, at that time, in the evolution of society, women had a significant value and status in society, sir, compared to the Guptan age, where they had lost power. But the reference, I believe, was to identify themselves, sir, due to the polygamy, I believe.
That is the reason. There are many queens. And if you name the mother along with the successor king, then you will be referring to the mother.
Yes.
That is the major reason. That is where, and many historians feel that this is giving respect to mother, that's why it's not exactly the reason. To specify the mother.
Yes.
They have to give it. So, do you have any important sites of Ikshwakus? Have you visited any important Ikshwaku site in your state?
Ikshwaku site, sir. Yes, sir. Nagarjuna Konda.
Have you visited?
Yes, sir.
What exactly, which place, and what you can describe some aspects of Ikshwaku architecture or whatever you want, whatever you saw in Nagarjunakonda.
Sir, I had visited the museum. I believe that there were relics of sculptures there. And it was an archaeological site. Specific elements of architecture of Ikshwakus. The Dravidian style elements were not so strongly prevalent, sir, at that time. They are not concretized there. The basic structure of temples, sir, like Garbhagriha and a boundary wall.
Have you seen a temple there?
Temples, no sir.
In the island?
I have not visited the islands.
The museum.
Yes.
That museum is in the island.
Yes, yes.
Temple is also there.
Not seen the temples.
Just before you enter the museum, on the left right side, that the way goes to leads to a temple just 100 meters away.
I did not visit.
That is actually medieval temple, not an old temple. Early temples of Ikshakus are lying on the banks, outer periphery of this museum. So you were talking about the architecture and all those things. But exactly, there is a specific thing to talk about the architectural style or sculptural style of Nagarjunakonda. What is the name given to the sculptural style? School. Which school?
School.
Do you know schools of sculpture? There are different schools in sculpture. Ancient India.
Sir, I think the Gandhara style,
Yeah.
the Mathura style,
Then,
Sarnath style, and Amravati style.
yes. Nagarjunakonda belongs to which style? Which school of art?
Amravati style. Sir.
Amravati style. Why? What exactly is Amravati style? Why it is named Amravati style?
Sir, Amravati style generally has group paintings, sir, and they have a 3D element in it. Like the sculpture is protruding out of the base, and they have marble as their base.
Sure. Marble?
Marble is the prominent element, sir.
Do you have marble in your area? You are from Nalgonda district. And marble is what is the stone used in Nagarjunakonda on all these areas?
Sir, I believe black
Never.
sandstone or granite, sir.
No, not sandstone. All the Buddhist art is in limestone, remember. Limestone.
Yes, sir, limestone is
Ah,
present here.
that is completely limestone. No marble. That is limestone. This Krishna Valley is complete limestone area.
Yes,
Based on this, you have one industry in that area. What exactly is that industry?
the cement industry, sir.
Cement industry. Because of the abundance of limestone, you have cement industry. What is the other area where you have limestone based cement industry in Telangana?
Sorry, sir. You would read.
Vikarabad region. Tandur.
Not aware, sir.
Tandur is having cement industry. It's because of the availability of limestone.
Yes, sir, Tandoor industry.
Again, we have limestone in North Telangana. Which is the area?
North Telangana.
Because of that, again, there you have cement industries. That Mancherial belt, you have limestone.
Not aware.
This is all geographical. These are the areas where you have the abundant limestone, and that helps you to have cement industries. And limestone is the basic material used in Amaravati school. Amaravati school's common feature is this runs in Krishna Valley. Why it is named as Amaravati school? Why not Nagarjunakonda school?
Sir, the province of Amravati Stupa.
Are you sure?
Sir, in my limited knowledge, the Amravati.
Why it is known as Harappan culture?
The site, sir. Harappa was the first.
Why not Kalibangan culture?
Sir, they named after the first site that is
The same answer for your Amaravati. Did you get my point?
Yes.
Amaravati was found much earlier, and first time they have noticed the sculptural style different from Gandhara and Mathura, and they named it as Amaravati School of Art. If Nagarjunakonda would have been seen first, sighted first, or excavated first, it would have been known as Nagarjunakonda School of Art.
Yes.
That's the simple reason. Okay. So coming back to this distance education aspect of it, and I want to know, distance education is a big, what you call, it has become so popular in recent times. Recent means for the past 20 years. Do you see a difference between the distance mode and a regular mode?
Yes, sir. I believe distance education is more flexible, sir. You can pursue it while also carrying out another economic activity, or it gives more flexibility, sir. And also, it has more reach. you can reach the remote corners by gearing up to satellite technology as such and digital education.
What are the disadvantages?
So disadvantages say limited interaction, direct interaction is limited, and the quality of textbooks is a bit low. Sir.
So which dominates in this? If you see negatives, pros and cons in regular mode and distance mode, which is the most what you call which is more appropriate for a better learning?
Sir, before the pandemic, I would have said regular education, but with the pandemic and during the pandemic, distance education, if properly leveraged, could have worked wonders. Sir.
Can you think it can be catered in a proper way in a country like India?
Yes, sir. But certain steps need to be taken. Sir.
What are the experiences we have found in the past 2 years? Have you gone through the reports of learning methods or learning outcomes in the pandemic times?
Yes. So students have dropped out of schools, sir, and the learning outcomes had fallen, both in foundation numeracy and literacy. Students were forced back into child labor, and due to the gap, they had lost touch. So there was a loss of 2 years
Hmm.
to state. And
So, if that is the case, then what do you think about? You said that with some small corrections or some steps we can do it.
yes,
Then are you ready to change your statement after the discussion?
sir, I said if you had properly utilized it, like there was digital divide, and people were not able to access textbooks. And I believe you need to evolve a hybrid model, combining both direct and distance education
Hmm.
to find a proper mix. Because in the remote corners where the teacher availability is less and infrastructure is poor, the quality of teaching is not up to the mark. Distance education is a potent tool, and to the people who have dropped out and who had had a break, to bring them back into the loop of education, distance education would serve as a stepping stone to integrate them.
That is true, but do you think your steps will help in this country, the present scenario, that digital divide and lack of many resources, and the social constraints are there, economic constraints are there. Do you think this can happen?
Sir, as I said, you should have used it as a complement to the regular education,
Only.
as a force multiplier. If you had solely relied on distance education, it would have it would have broken down due to the structural inequalities over there, access problems, social problems, economic problems.
You said about the child labor. What are the reports? Have you gone through any reports? Many children were forced back into the child labor. Any reports have you gone through these days, post pandemic?
Sir, I think there was a report by UNICEF.
Hmm.
They had said that in certain states which had vulnerabilities like poverty and the marginalized sections who had not access to social security networks, and they had been involved in jobs which had been affected by the pandemic, they had suffered more.
What are the states?
So, as far as I can recollect, the migrant states, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana were included. Sir.
Andhra Pradesh, Telangana.
Yes, sir, Telangana was there.
Into
These vulnerable states. Sir.
vulnerable. What about Odisha,
Odisha, yes, sir, Odisha was also there.
Rajasthan,
Uh, not able to. Sir.
Bihar?
Bihar was there. Sir.
Bihar was there. During the pandemic, which states you could see?
We'll take 1 minute.
Yeah. In Telangana, what are the states where we can see some of the labor coming into Telangana and working in brick kilns?
Sir,
Brick kilns.
districts.
States. Which states people? Migrant labor from which state are into Telangana to work in brick kilns? Because it's a popular phenomenon. People from which state?
Sir, I'm not exactly sure, but I not exactly sure, sir. But I remember reading that Bihar and Jharkhand built it.
Odisha is dominant.
Okay.
And some of the districts like Bolangir and all those things, there are large number of people they are coming into.
Very
Yeah. And there is a program to have schools at the brick kilns itself. Do you know about it?
Yes, sir, I read an article on it.
Under which scheme they are supporting that?
Sir, as far as I remember, they wanted to reduce the child labor and increase the enrollment in primary education level. So they started uh, creating schools near the break skills. Scheme, I think Manoru Manipadi, sir. I'm not sure.
That is known as OSC. The children are known as OSC, out of school children. And school at workplace is supported by the World Bank project. Do you know the name exactly? There is a name for this project. All the states in this country are under this project only. World Bank is supporting India under this project. Have you heard about Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan?
Yes.
Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is the old one. Now it is not Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, it is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan.
Yes.
This is catering to such children. Since you are from, your mother is a teacher, have you heard about these Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan schools?
No, sir.
Discuss with her.
Okay, sir.
This triple S, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, now it is Samagra Shiksha. So under Samagra Shiksha, lots of things were done in school education. Funding, infrastructure, and OAC, out of school children, bridge schools, all these things. Bridge school. This is another concept to bring back the children who are not into the regular stream. In your intermediate, I believe, your second language or your optional, what exactly is that? Sanskrit.
Yes.
Yes? Let's talk something about Sanskrit, 12th standard. Why you chose Sanskrit?
Sir, just because people were choosing it for higher marks, sir, and trying out a new subject.
You don't get more marks in Telugu,
Yes.
Sanskrit. So, what did you learn in your academic career through choosing Sanskrit? Can you name some of the poets whose works you have studied in class 12? Not in a big way, but at least you might be knowing some of the names.
Poets, sir. Sanskrit poets. What about it?
Till 10th, it was Telugu.
Yes.
Can you name some of the poets
Telugu poets, sir.
you studied in your schooling?
Demana, sir.
Vemana.
Tikkaram. Uttara.
Have you, I think you should have Raghuvamsham or Kumara Sammoha in class 12. Have you heard about Kalidasa?
Yes.
Did you have any chapter about any part of Kalidasa's works in your Sanskrit?
No, sir.
Do you remember remotely what exactly you have studied in Sanskrit? You might have answered in English only.
Yes, sir.
Then you should have written some prose also.
Yes, sir. In English, sir.
In English. What was the story? Can you just recollect any story written from the classic? No.
Sir, Kalidasa's works were not included in the syllabus.
Whose works were included in your syllabus?
I'm not able to recollect, sir.
Shall leave it. So, are you interested in literature? Do you read novels, fiction, or any genre?
Yes. English classics.
English classics.
Yes.
Who is your favorite author?
Sir, I would say I have not read a bunch of books under single author, sir. I have read good quality books from multiple authors. So, from what I've gathered, I would say Charles Dickens.
Charles Dickens.
The Tale of Two Cities.
What exactly is the essence of Tale of Two Cities?
Sir, it is based on a strife or it is a social setup of French Revolution, sir, and it is based in two cities, London and Paris. It displays how people have experienced the revolution on the ground, both the upper classes and the lower classes. So it was a compelling story, right, sir.
Apart from Charles Dickens, any other author?
I would say Jane Austen, sir.
Title?
Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice. You have talked about the classics. But what about the contemporary English writing? Do you have any idea of contemporary English writing?
Yes, I have read The White Tiger by Arvind Adiga, sir.
Arvind Adiga. Arvind Adiga is having some similarity with you. What exactly is the similarity?
I think he was an IIT guy, sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
And bureaucrat, background.
Yes.
There is another man who is a popular, Chetan Bhagat.
Yes, sir.
You talked about two cities. There is another novel by him, two states, Chetan Bhagat. These two states, having read two states?
Sir, I know the storyline, but I haven't read
Storyline.
the book.
Have you watched the film?
Yes, sir.
What exactly is the story of these two states?
Sir, it shows when two people are married and they come from two different ethnicities and cultures. The general stereotypes each holds regarding the other, and what difficulties would they face in trying to put up the marriage and to sustain it, and convincing the families to get on with it.
Apart from Arvind Adiga, any other?
Sir, I've read the Suitable Biology concept.
Arundhati Rai?
Arundhati Roy, I know the storyline, sir, but I've not read the
Which one?
God of Small Things.
What is the latest novel of Arundhati Rai?
Arundhati Roy, latest novel, sorry, sir.
So after God of Small Things, she completely focused on political writing. Yes. And after a long time, she has written a fiction.
So it's a not able to recall.
Just refer. Jhampalahari?
Jampalari, no, sir, not read her books.
Have you heard the film Namesake?
Yes.
Who is the author of the Namesake?
I think, sorry, sir, not able to recall. that,
Okay,
but
anyway, just you talked about this contemporary English writing or novels. What about the literature in Telugu?
In Telugu, I've not, unfortunately, I've not read much in Telugu.
So why you, though English is not your culture, you are not from the basic English culture, you have read the classics, but you couldn't, or you never had an opportunity, or you were not into reading Telugu literature. Why so?
Sir,
As a student of social science, you analyze yourself and tell me the reason.
Sir, the reason I was attracted towards the English books was that during my school age, I was exposed more towards the English books present there in libraries, sir. So, unknowingly and unconsciously, due to the exposure to the English books, I found an interest into it. So, in that way, I had not had an opportunity to explore Telugu literature, and I was exploring more of English literature.
Do you read newspaper regularly?
Yes,
Which newspaper?
the Hindu, sir.
In your mother tongue?
In the Telugu paper, not so frequent, sir.
Why so?
I've lost the touch of reading fast, sir. So it takes a lot of time.
As an administrator in future, you should be completely mingling with the people,
Yes.
the local populace. If you are allocated to some other state, you will be forced to learn the new language and these things. But you did not inculcate the habit of newspaper reading in your own mother tongue. Is it not an impediment?
Sir, I would not see it as an impediment. I chose the English paper simply for the purpose that it has a more broad coverage of national and international issues rather than local issues, which are generally focused by the local language papers.
But how do you understand the local issues without going through the local newspaper?
Sir, the sections, the 2, 3, 4, and 5 sections of the local edition of Hindu also cover the local issues, sir.
Very, very vaguely. I could read Hindu.
Yes, sir.
Yeah? You will be reading the Kerala's local news also in the newspaper in Hyderabad. How it is going to help your local understanding? There is a difference. This is a big difference between North Indian and South Indian students. All the North Indian aspirants, they read the Hindi newspaper too. In South India, we are more into English education and we lost our touch in regional language. I have interacted with many people in North India. So, better you read newspapers always. Telugu newspaper. Since you lost touch, your slow reading and these things will not help. You can read Charles Dickens, but you can't read a newspaper means what? Do you think there is some problem in understanding?
Sir, not in understanding, but as I said, it takes more time to grasp information because I've lost
But
touch.
it's a problem of habit,
Yes, sir. Sir.
is it not?
Yes, sir.
It's because we didn't. Now we couldn't. That's it. Simple answer. Nothing more than that.
Yes.
Our what you call our understanding or our habits are forcing us not to be local and only global. I'm giving a statement. Now education is more global than local. Do you agree with this statement?
So the broader trend in education as such has been oriented towards global. That element I do accept, but I do think because of the state education and state boards, the local element is also included, sir.
In new education policy, what exactly is the gist of the new education policy related to this global and local aspect?
Sir,
Have you gone through the new education policy
Yes.
recently introduced?
Yes. Sir, it gives, there is a section focused on providing education in the media of mother tongue up to 5th class and preferably up to 8th class. So, and there is also a provision for university in Pali, Prakrit, and Persian, and giving fillip to Sanskrit in higher education institutions. So, by these steps,
Do you think by simply making a provision for Pali, Prakrit, Sanskrit, it will help? Or is it just an eyewash?
sir, I believe it is a good step, and we have to start somewhere.
You have chosen Sanskrit for scoring marks. And in post graduation or there you have given Pali, Prakrit, Sanskrit. And in civil services you have Pali as one of the optional. How many choose Pali as the optional?
Not many, sir.
Everyone will go for anthropology. Is it not? Then how can you say that these steps will help to have a holistic approach towards new education? How do you analyze this? What to do if really it has to happen?
To encourage local elements, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I think research and more studies and literature needs to be produced in local languages because once you start to disseminate high quality knowledge in local literature, people will generally try to prefer it because mother tongue provides better understanding. Cognitive capacities are well improved when you read in mother tongue.
In IIT, what was your branch?
Computer science, sir.
Computer science. So you have the basic understanding of computers and you went up to IIT.
Yes.
So now there is a thing about artificial intelligence. This artificial intelligence, do you think that it is going to be a boon or a bane?
Sir, just like any other technology, it has its gifts and caveats. We need to be careful around. Coming to gifts, it can provide more of a personalized experience and it can divert people from manual and hard work to more of a soft and technological and skill based work. Repetitive work can be replaced with the machine and sophisticated AI powered robots. Coming to the negatives of it, there is a need to upskill people who have been left behind. So this widens the social gaps. People from the marginalized sections are more vulnerable to the advent of AI. And as the World Economic Forum report says, in 2040, 45% of the jobs would exist which are not existing today. So there is a high-paced and accelerated change happening, and we need to gear up our education systems and skilling frameworks to live up to it.
Again, there is a divide worldwide. Countries in Africa or Asia are populous and poor. Do you think these countries, or the population of these countries, will gear to these challenges, gear up to these challenges? Will not there be any divide again in future because of this?
Yes, sir. In the present conditions, there is a lot of gaps, sir, either in resources or the quality of education and the attainment levels and the literacy levels between Africa and the third world and the first world. So, in this juncture, if AI is to be taken up, yes, sir, the gap will widen. The first world people will be more equipped, or they have a better chance to leverage and exploit the opportunities provided by AI, and the third world countries will face certain problems. But I believe this can be solved or addressed to a little extent by international cooperation like South-South cooperation and setting up universities for, as I said, digital education. These elements can provide to reduce the gaps to some extent.
You have used very interesting. It is first world, second world, third world. Are we using it nowadays?
Sir, the terminology has actually changed to developed and least developing and developing countries.
Hmm. What was the background for this first world, second world, and third world in polity?
Sir, during the time of the Cold War, the liberal democratic order, they represented the first world.
Yeah.
And the socialist communist order, and the nations which subscribe to that ideology, they belong to the second world. The newly independent states who had gained independence post-colonialism, they represented the third world.
Third world. So post-colonialism. Again, there is a term used in terms of polity, neo-colonial. Can you explain what exactly is neo-colonial order?
Sir, neo-colonial is an order where indirectly certain countries which are more powerful and they have access to power in the international order are running the game, and they get to call the shots regarding the policy making, political economy of the third world. Sir. For example, whether the IMF loans which are given, the conditionalities that are imposed to get a loan, these come under the neo-colonialism.
Do you consider some of the aspects as neo-colonial in India?
In the policy aspects. Sir.
Policy aspects. Same thing as you have described about IMF conditionalities. In all the third world countries, we have this problem, accepting to the conditionalities imposed by IMF. If that criteria is taken, even India had to succumb to such pressures, and we have succumbed. So, do you think it's neo-colonial again?
Sir, I would say most of neoliberalism, sir, rather than neo-colonialism in the context of India, because the change in the international order, where US emerged as a single power, and the change of the international politics at that stage, and the conditions which we were in 1991 forced us to change to a more of a liberal order, sir, from the socialist thought and the policy making which we had chosen. So I believe it's more of a neoliberal order in India, sir, rather than neo-colonial.
So what was the term given during that period of senior Bush of this condition of the world when the Cold War has ended? There is a term, proper term, US used, New World Order. Have you heard about it?
Yes.
New World Order. What do you mean by New World Order of US of 1990s?
So the New World Order was based on more of democratic principles, sir. And sticking up to the international law and compliance with rule of law, sir.
If I say it is America's order is New World Order?
Sir, in any part of history, it is generally observed that there is an undercurrent where the hegemon of the time runs and protects the world order, sir. He is the one who sets up the world order, and he is the one who maintains it by regulating it. So, in the situation of 1991, US was the hegemon, so it had certain elements of its own ideology that had influence in the world order.
What is the present condition? How do you define the present day world order?
Sir, I would say multilateralism is a bit on the decline. There are multiple states and multiple players that are emerging, and there are too many uncertainties.
So, how many blocks are there in present day world?
Blocks. I think, sir, the block mentality has been lost, but unfortunately, certain elements of the Cold War era are still surviving in the West versus China. And the block mentality is still coming up.
Then what is the then if it is the case, then where is the problem with Ukraine joining NATO?
Yes,
If your answer says this is the thing, then this is the problem with NATO. Russia is saying that you shouldn't join NATO. So if it is, if your answer is the ultimate one, or if you stick to your answer, fit this Ukrainian crisis into that and tell me.
sir. I would say Ukraine crisis is more of a security dilemma, sir.
Hmm.
Post 1991, US has been actively expanding onto the Eastern Europe with the NATO. This has caused security dilemma and security insecurities in Russia. And when the NATO had the threat of expanding up to its borders, Russia took a drastic step of taking a unilateral military action on Ukraine. Sir. So, as of now, I don't see the exact crystallization of bloc politics and alliances, sir, as was seen in the Cold War era. But foreign policy thinkers are saying that a new Cold War is emerging. But I believe it has not arrived yet.
If US and NATO is on one side, what could be the other bloc, other pole? Which countries will be on the other side of the pole?
Sir, potential
Potential.
counterweight to NATO would be an axis that would consist of Russia, China, Iran, and possibly Turkey, sir.
India.
India would stay neutral, sir, to protect its interests.
Then what will be the problem? What will be the position of India in Shanghai Cooperation?
Sir, SEO, India has joined SEO for its own interests, sir, to engage with multiple agencies in areas like security, primarily security, terrorism, and these growth, sir, economic trade and activity, commerce. And trying to engage with multiple players rather than sticking to our strong relations with the US should be counterbalanced with our relations with Russia and China and the Central Asian nations for access
Is
to energy resources. So
is there any damage in the recent times because of this Ukrainian crisis? Is there any damage with the ties with US, our relations with US?
sir, US at such junctures where sensitivities are on high and nations are pitting the third world nations against each other, and they are forcing them to join blocks or take a stance against each other. India has taken a moderate stance, balancing its interests and principles. We have taken a stance where there is chance for de-escalation and peaceful settlement of the crisis through dialogue, sir. So there are, due to the and in the context of the visit of NSA of US recently, the Lipsing, they have been warning us that there would be consequences for our stance. But I believe India-US relations are broad-based, and there are well-seasoned diplomats in the Indian foreign policy establishment who can walk the tightrope, sir, the diplomatic tightrope. So we would still pass through this crisis with maintaining good relations with all the great powers, sir, Russia, China, US.
What will be the fallout of Afghanistan's the US pullout of Afghanistan? Pullout from Afghanistan.
So consequences for India or the world?
India.
India. So I would say more of security crisis, sir, because of the Taliban. The governance framework in Afghanistan has weakened, and there are multiple grey areas where ISIS is growing, and ISIS is directly challenging the authority of Taliban also. So there is a chance that this security crisis can spill over to Kashmir, sir.
How many days passed since US pulled out of Afghanistan? How many months?
Uh,
Approx.
I think 15 months, sir.
Is it so? 1 year passed?
1 year has passed.
Okay. If 1 year is passed, then the situation or the apprehensions which were there when the pullout was happening, actual pullout was happening till date. Is there any change in the what you call our understanding that we'll have some security threat because of the pullout?
Yes, sir. The Taliban 2.0 had promised that they would be more democratic. They would still be an Islamic republic, but they would give free leeway to women to pursue
No, no.
education.
Is there any fallout on India? We had apprehensions that there will be a big fallout, impact on Kashmir and all these things.
Yes, sir.
Did it happen in these days?
So, in light of only the 1 year which has happened, the security situation has not escalated to the extent that it's estimated.
Why so?
I think Taliban is more concentrated towards consolidating their own regime and gaining legitimacy in the international order.
This is important. That legitimacy aspect is important.
Yes.
Taliban has changed its tone and tenor which it had before. Now they are trying to be the legitimate rulers. In this process, what is the role of India? What we are doing in this process? Are we recognizing it, or are we just being silent, watch and wait and watch?
Yes, sir. Till Taliban had taken over, we had strong cordial relations with the president of Afghanistan, Mr. Ghani, sir. But the sudden takeover and the violent nature in which it happened forced us to take more of a wait and watch stance, sir. Because an immediate acceptance of Taliban as the legitimate rulers of Afghanistan would create problems in as such, sir, because it is at the end of the day, it's a bargaining chip, sir, and we would like to use it to impose on them more of an. We would try to impose international law on them so that they can be credible players and responsible actors who would stick to international law rather than being a rogue player.
One more question on international relations. What exactly is the problem with our immediate neighbors, Nepal?
Yes, Nepal. We have a traditional roti-beti relationship with Nepal, sir. Free flow of people and cultural ties. But with the rise of China, China is increasing its presence there. Politically, it's supporting directly and indirectly the communist parties of Nepal, and we are losing that much of influence. We are no more the single. We are no more the sole. We are no more the sole provider of security in Nepal, and the trade relations with China are growing, which is a threat or apprehension for India. And there is a second issue of the cartographic aggression which Nepal had conducted. So the border issue needs to be resolved. So that is the second matter, I would say.
Which is the primary reason behind this situation? Is it India's understanding of international relations or Nepal's tilt towards China?
Sir, I would say till the rise of China, India was the sole regional power of South Asia. But with the emergence of China and its interest in trying to be holding an influence and project its power in South Asia, the neighbors of India are trying to engage or balance India's influence in them by their relationships with China. So this has been seen in the case of Nepal and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, sir. But the problem is they are being attracted to the easy money and the easy terms on which money is being provided by China. But they are not being apprehensive towards the lack of transparency and the feasibility of the projects and the debt trap diplomacy which China has been actively pursuing. And once they are under the fold of China, they are taking more of a Chinese tilted stance. For example, it was the Yamin regime. They had, and now even today they are organizing the India Out campaign to remove India's presence in Maldives. And the Communist Party of Nepal is seeing more of a bloc politics emerging, and it is even opposing the MCC project of US in Nepal. So I would say the changing realities of the time and the emergence of China and its presence in South Asia is helping new players in the region. The smaller neighborhood political parties are acting up due to the changed realities.
Is there any big brother attitude towards Nepal from India side? Because they accuse this always.
Yes, the smaller neighbors have always seen, or they have been apprehended, or they have had apprehensions of the big brother nature of India, sir. But India has been sensitive towards the neighbors, but there are certain flagship incidents like the 2015 blockade with Nepal, which had created tensions, and they had disturbed the cordial relationships we had with Nepal. And it was since 2015 that Nepal has been tilting to and trying to balance India and China.
Any treaty which is totally biased towards India and it is the most talked treaty between Nepal and India, controversial treaty. Any controversial treaty which is in favor of India than Nepal. One of the most talked or discussed treaty between India and Nepal. People show this as the India's big brother's attitude towards Nepal. Have you heard of Mahakali treaty?
Yes, sir.
That is it.
The treaty which had happened, in which Nepal and India have different stances on the border, sir.
River water treaty.
River watershed.
River water and the dams construction. This is Mahakali treaty basically. So coming back to some later points. Do you watch films?
Films, yes, sir.
Language?
Language, English and Telugu, sir.
English. Who is your favorite actor in English?
Favorite actor, Meryl Streep, sir.
Meryl Streep. Which film?
I would have to say Julie and Julius.
Okay. So Eric Brokovich. Have you heard about this film?
I remember the name, but I haven't seen the movie.
This is not Julia Roberts movie. Just I have taken one film. Eric Brokovich.
No, sir, not first.
So any recent films?
Recent films, Sham Singh Rai in Telugu.
Sham Singh Rai. What is the appealing aspect in Sham Singh Rai for you?
Sir, they had discussed a social problem.
Of
Sir,
which social problem?
the Devdasi system, sir. It showed how the protagonist played a major role in providing leadership and trying to provide alternative opportunities to the Devdasis who had been emerged, who had come out of the system, and how he had vehemently fought against the system via literature, sir.
Can you name some of the reformers who fought, who based a struggle on Devdasi system in India?
Sorry, sir, not able to recall it.
Anyone who talked about our Devdasi system, any act?
Sorry, sir.
Is there any act against this Devdasi system enacted?
Sorry, sir.
Go through the aspect. Okay, there is an act, Devadasi Abolition Act. Okay, so what exactly is Devadasi? Do you know what exactly are the historical reasons behind this Devadasi system and its present forms?
Sir, the present form, I believe there is a Jogini system variant in Telangana, where girls are allocated to temples and they are restricted, and then during their lifetime they have only access to the temple premises and they are seen as married to God. The origins of the system, I'm not aware of the exact origins of the systems.
Devadasi itself is
God's slave.
serving in the temples.
Yes.
It started as something which is not so oppressive, as many people from the families, respectable families also went and danced before the god. Performances, dance and music performances. That is the origin. But again, then restricted to some sections and finally become it's an obnoxious form of repression. Okay. So Devadasi is a system. As you have talked about Devadasi system, This is one of the, we have an act also. That is, in present day society, which is the most important social evil or a practice which is hindering our progress? Can you name the most important social evil of present day society?
I would say child marriage.
Still you have.
Yes, we still have.
What is the gravity of the situation?
Yes, sir. In the heartland and in certain parts like in Telangana, maybe it is still going on, sir. In the rural areas in hinterlands, because of multiple reasons, sir. They are seeing the perception of seeing women as a burden, the liability, and the security issues which aggravate with age. Mm, They are not trying. They do not want to risk the family being blamed,
Hmm.
and they do not envisage women playing a leadership role. So, and these have factors and traditions are also added to child marriages.
What is the enactment or what is the law to curb such practices?
So, it started with the Sharda Act, sir, and then we have the provision of Child Marriage Act, and the latest amendment in 2019, 2021 to increase the age of marriage of women from 19 to 20, 18 to 21. Sir.
Do, do you support this 18 to 21? How it is going to change? How it is going to empower women by altering the or but by raising the age limit to 21 for women?
So the bill in its aims wants to remove the barrier or the inequality in between men and women, at least in the age of marriage, by bringing a parity between men and women. Sir. It would have positive consequences like reducing child marriages, or I would say early pregnancies, which would happen in the age of 18 to 21, where MMR and IMR are high, and I would say with the age of marriage being increased to 21, women would more want to pursue higher education and they have higher chances of financial independence. And this would help create a more gender inclusive and gender equal society, I believe. But there are certain oppositions to this act which say that when you are instead of increasing the age to 21, maybe you should equate the age of men to women because you have the power of vote at the age of 18 and you are not giving women the right to marry at the age of 18.
You can choose your representative,
At the age of
but
18.
not the partner, life partner.
Yes.
Really, do you think that marriageable age in what is the minimum age in advanced countries?
Sir, it varies, sir. In Netherlands, I think it is 16. So there is a variance from 15, 16 to 18, sir.
The upper age limit is 18 in the whole world. And if you are increasing to 21, how do you justify this? How do you justify this hike, increasing the upper limit to 80, 21? And it's not a, what you call, mechanically reducing 21 and 18 by saying that both can marry only at 80, 21. Do you think it is going to empower women?
Sir, I believe it will bring about a positive change. First, about seeing them as equal partners. Because there is
First
a
of all, let me ask you a question. Why there was a gap between men and women at the marriageable age? Was there any scientific evidence, or what exactly made our constitution makers or lawmakers to have this difference?
sir, there is a general myth that women mature earlier than men.
Hmm.
That was one of the contributing reasons.
Is it a myth or scientifically proven?
So feminists say it's a myth,
Hmm.
but from anthropological knowledge, I can say that the adolescent age, or the age crest, or when the age pulse, the growth pulse happens 2 years earlier in women rather than men. But maturity, as such, I think in today's age and time, there is need to view women and men on the same level.
Then by raising, are we not making women more vulnerable in the hinterlands?
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
Sir, I think this is a positive step, but there are certain issues that are rising up, as you said, vulnerability. But we have to, I think we should be having a policy where we are tackling this, like ensuring women's safety, rather than saying that women, because this has the pros outweigh the cons, sir. Because they can have higher education and they can have improve their socio-economic situation and reduce the IMR and MMR incidence, sir. So I still think it's a good move. Yes.
What about the practicability?
Yes, sir.
See, when we have long years of this enactment, child marriage prohibition, still we haven't achieved it. Now we increase it to 21. Is it going to help?
So it is a positive step and ideal we have been setting for ourselves. But we need to improve on the implementation parts. We need to go for monitoring and we need to go for behavior change. We need to learn from, we need to work with NGOs and civil societies to improve the enforcement of the act. As we have seen in the Ganjam district of Odisha, where they have come up with a Nirbhay Kadi initiative, where they have provided incentives at the birth of the girl child, which will grow and which will help them in pursuing education goals because they gave it as a lump sum on reaching the age of 18. And they have also come up with an initiative where any person who is going to report a child marriage is going to be given a prize money of 50,000. And I remember Athar Amir IAS in Rajasthan, I think Barmer district, sir. He had created a coordination in the girl children itself of the district. They would report any child marriage happening. And broader behavior change campaigns need to be taken up, sir.
Do you have such examples in Telangana?
Yes, sir. The scheme Shadi Mubarak and Kalyan Lakshmi.
That is government side. You talked about NGOs.
NGOs, sorry, so not aware of them.
Telangana is a big state where we had such experiments and we worked. MB Foundation, so Nalgonda, Suryapet, Devarkadra, lots of things happened. Stopping child marriages, Srikalahasti campaign. So why I talked about is, because of these examples you have studied in somewhere in our preparation period. But there are examples in your native state also. Very popular examples. You should go through them.
Sir, will you repeat the name? MB Foundation.
MB Foundation. Child marriage, they have stopped. Hundreds of cases. In Srikalahasti, there was a huge campaign. And because of that campaign, we have got, the government has given a new thing, child marriage rules they have created. And without having the birth certificate, you cannot marry in a temple. Before that, this happened in 2008. Not 8, 2006. 2006, there was a huge campaign in Srikalahasti where on the Mahashivratri day, there used to be at least 2,000 child marriages at one stroke. 2,000 one day. And there was a big campaign. After this, the state government, Human Rights Commission, there was a public hearing. And the rule was made that without the birth certificate, the marriage will not happen in any school, any temple.
Yes.
And since then they have started.
Another move could be registration of marriage.
Registration of marriage. That is made part of the effort basically. And that rules, Child Marriage Prohibition Act rules, framed in 2006 or so in AB. That is because of the NGOs, not because of the government. It was a huge campaign. Okay, why I have shown this? In the process of preparation, you might have studied about examples of other states. But what about your area?
I was not aware of it.
Is it not? That is where we have to improve upon. Anyway, good talking to you, Dheeraj.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
So, Dheeraj, both of your parents are school teachers, right?
Sir, mother is a teacher, father is retired principal. Sir.
Yeah. So they were
Teaching.
So he was into teaching profession, right?
Yes.
So both of them were into teaching profession. What is the impact it had on you in shaping your personality?
Yes, sir. Coming from a teaching family, sir, my parents definitely emphasized on discipline and moderation, sir, moderation, because we come from a middle class family. So having moderation, discipline, hardworking attitude, and perseverance I think this were hardware into me, sir, in my personality, coming from a teaching family.
Okay. And you had mentioned about leading the freshers party or freshers organizing, right? You were organizing some freshers group.
Yes.
So, any specific reasons why did you mention it in your tab?
Yes,
So, you consider it as an achievement?
sir, in 12th standard, I come from a corporate college, sir. So, as an element of diversity or a break from the routine studies, organizing the Fresher Day provided me opportunity to connect with people, sir, and to get a diverse hands-on experience on organizing an event. So, it was an opportunity and I took it, sir.
Okay. And what do you think are the problems plaguing Indian bureaucracy, and how would you make a difference to it?
Yes, sir. The biggest problem I see would be the gap, sir. Having a Maybach attitude where they are not able to locate themselves.
Can you repeat what you said?
The Maybach attitude, sir. That is what the popular term is. They are not able to locate themselves in the people, sir. Or say the elitist tendency. And I would say my contribution to bureaucracy would be to being more engaging with the people and making more moves to bring in transparency and accountability to bureaucracy, making it more participative for the people to engage with bureaucracy, sir.
Do you regret having not completed your course at IIT?
Sir, not really, sir. Because I had to make a choice and based on my interests and what I wanted to pursue, and the opportunity costs were high. But at that time, I took a call based on what I wanted to do in pursue in my future and what I would be good at and what I would be satisfied in doing. So I do not regret it.
Any opposition from parents?
So initially there was opposition, but I persuaded them.
Hmm.
I persuaded them by saying that even if now, if I just wait for 4 years without looking for the future, I would face this problem 20 years down the line and 30 years down the line as a midlife crisis. And if I can't take a risk at this age in 20s, I would not be able to take a risk and reap the opportunities when I'm 30 or 40. So I took a call.
Coming from a teaching family background, what do you think could be the measures to improve the efficacy of teaching in Indian schools or the pedagogy per se?
Yes. Uh, from pedagogical perspective, I would say you need to bring in more of non-formal education, sir. Going for more experience-based education and trying to make it more interesting for children. Like in the early stages, we need to go for play-based learning and going for more of study tours and giving more opportunity for children to explore areas where they are more interested in. These areas would improve the pedagogy, sir. And to make teaching more effective, I would say try to engage in multifarious experiences. Like rather than having a passive teacher speaking and a child learning, I would want a proactive dimension where students would play their own role by experiences and taking up new and areas where they are more interested in. So this would be the difference.
Do you think that the recent educational policy serves this purpose?
Yes, sir. They have rewired the curriculum framework to the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 model, wherein they are seeing the early education stage of the plus kindergarten and the plus one and first and second standard as a group, where the 85% of brain formation is developing in the children. This is an area where
Cognitive
you
formation.
yes, cognitive capacities are developed at this age, and you need to focus more, and there needs to be more organic link up in the kindergarten and in the first and second standards. And you need to go for play-based learning. So they are going for a holistic education where they are trying to separate, they are trying to reduce the separations which have been traditionally placed between curriculum and extracurricular activities. So play-based learning would be more helpful.
Can you name some experiments or some examples of such learning in India? Or theories or great institutions?
The Krishnamurti Foundation, Krishnamurti School, JD Krishnamurti Schools, they give more of liberty to students to engage in areas where they're more interested. Shanti Niketan, that would be an interesting model, sir, because we are trying to bring synergies between the West and East in arts and sciences. In Telangana, I remember reading an article where in the preschools they had designed alphabets and numbers as a form of some snakes and ladders, where they are exploring each letter, going stage to stage, and trying to remember things which were engaged, which they see or as connected to that letters. So this evoked interest in the children. So these are the models I noticed.
So, good, we have discussed many things like your personal things, your choices, and international relations. First, you tell me what are the things you have to improve upon? What did you observe in the entire process?
Sir, state issues I'm not so strong upon. I need to work upon geography, especially, which I thought I was good at reasonably, but since there are elements I need to remember and the centuries and all of the kings, I was not able to recall. I read it, but I was not able to recall the moment, the heat of the moment. And I would say international politics, I think I did fairly good enough. The other areas, opinion-based questions, I think I was fairly decent.
The local aspects, I'm not much worried about the facts and information, but the conceptually you should be strong. Of course, concepts can be formed only through having the basic information. This is where most of the students fail. For example, see, unable to talk about any chapter in your plus 2 Sanskrit, not even unable to correct even one thing. Whereas you can tell about Charles Dickens, there lies the gap between the holistic approach towards education. It's not your problem. It's a problem of the education. Many have second language as French, Sanskrit, French. So French also is most sort of second language because of marks. So when we speak very openly also in your interview, sometimes you have to hide such things.
Yep.
Hide means you should comfortably ignore, or you should answer it in a fair way. That is a major thing. Otherwise, what will happen? There is a big gap between what you are speaking and what you did. Is not.
Yes.
I see you as a person who is pursuing his what you call ambition, just leaving IIT. But when it comes to the local language, magazine or newspaper, there you feel that need not. Huh? So
It is a time crunch and I have to make
time,
choices.
actually, this is not the time problem. This is the mindset problem for local aspects. So you can think about, or you get the information about what is happening in Orissa when we are talking about child marriage, but we don't know or we are unable to get the information about the local state, our area. There lies the problem. Not your problem. I am very frank about it. This is the general trend and mindset. Because you get all these things in your notes and all those things, yojana, notes, some of the materials you prepare for competitive examinations. Whereas we don't see around us what's happening. That is where that is lacking. But still, good, you have answered international relations fairly well. Okay. So, all the best. Sometimes, at times, I immediately interrupted you and asked you some questions. There you can work upon. Okay. So I'm not brain eye pain nothing. Since morning I was into some serious work. By this time, unable to recall where some questions you have answered. Just you can recall, you can see. So I interrupted in between and said, "Is it so?" Cold War period also, those blocks also. Okay, so those just recall those questions where you have to work upon.
Yes. So it would be better if I would not say the first and third will kind of like.
No, it's a good thing. Then you will get a question based on your answer, and you fairly answered. That first world orders, the first world, second world, third world, it's good. Even neo-colonial also, you answered well. But still, that neo-colonial answer, I believe, when you say some generalization, if it is asked again, putting your country, that is India, you can't say that yes, it is neo-colonial. But any political scientist can openly say that this is neo-colonial.
That's why I said neoliberalism.
Yes. So that is a fairly good answer, no doubt about it. Okay. Those areas, I tried to intervene then in there itself as a part of discussion. Just think about those things. Okay. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
This video is brought to you by AKS IAS.